Good evening and welcome. My name is Taylor Kingman. As president of the Board of Trustees of the San Angelo Independent School District, I would like to welcome all of you who are present at tonight's Preagenda board meeting. We appreciate your interest in the activities of our students and the business of SAISD. All items that will be discussed at our meeting this evening have been posted as required by state law. Also, as you may be aware, our board meets a minimum of 2 times per month, and most of the items on our agenda this evening will be discussed tonight and voted upon at a regular board meeting. As members of the SAISD Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports from our superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, and personnel appointments, and to make policy for the district. Please keep in mind that our meeting is a meeting of the Board of Trustees held in public and not a meeting of the public. However, we do have a public comment item on our agenda that allows anyone present who wishes to speak to our board team on an item that is not on our action agenda or an action item on the agenda an opportunity to do so. Please provide your name and contact information and the specific topic you wish to address on a public comment form located in the back of the room prior to the start of tonight's meeting. Please listen carefully and comply with the following rules so we can move through this part of the meeting efficiently. Each speaker will be given a total of 3 minutes. The district will provide an official timekeeper. You will be notified when your time is up and you are to stop speaking and return to your seat. Please respect the privacy of others and refrain from identifying students, employees, or other community members by name. Disruption of the meeting will not be tolerated at any time, and comments on any subject, whether positive or negative, must be courteous and respectful. Comments are limited to the specific topic you indicated on your form you filled out. Any speaker with a specific complaint about a district employee, decision, or operational issue should present that complaint through the appropriate mechanism, which is the district's formal grievance process. If you have a pending grievance being processed by the district, you will not be permitted to speak about the grievance during public comment. Also, please understand if you offer public comment, the board cannot reply to you except to thank you for your comments since the matter has not been posted for discussion. I ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking. I also ask, as I remind my fellow board members, to please turn off or silence your cell phones. Again, thank you for being here and for your support of SAISD. With that, we do have a quorum this evening. Our entire board team is present. And if you all will stand and join me with the pledges. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Next on our agenda is public comments, but I'm going to take a moment of privilege and ask that we have a moment of silence in regards to the passing of Carol Ann Bonds. Her impact on our district, our military community, and our city is real and palpable throughout this town. And so I just ask that if everyone just give just a moment in remembrance of her. Thank you. Now we're going to move forward with public comments. First up is Miss Cynthia Rutledge.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Rutledge, and I appreciate your letting me speak tonight. I'm a big reader. I love reading. I think it's basically the cornerstone of all education and critical thinking skills. And because I am so devoted to reading, I would urge you to vote no on the Bluebonnet curriculum for 2 reasons. One, it seems to be an inferior curriculum for teaching reading, and secondly, it's a violation of the constitutional separation between church and state. The Bluebonnet curriculum cuts student reading time in half, and there are no provisions in it for individual or small group reading. During testimony at the Texas State Board of Education on this curriculum, many reading language arts teachers and researchers cited the evidence through the decades. The best way to improve reading skills is to spend time reading. Therefore, anything that cuts reading time in half could be assumed to be inferior in and of itself. Instead of spending time reading, the Bluebonnet methodology would have the teachers present a word and then a mini lecture or story about the word. Another opponent to the Bluebonnet curriculum that testified at the Texas State Board of Education was a spokesperson from the American Historical Association, and she stated that the way history is best presented is as it actually happened rather than an interpretation through a biased viewpoint. She noted that the Bluebonnet stories contain a lot of historical inaccuracies submitted in such a way as to slant towards a particular bias. Bible stories are incorporated into the curriculum, which I have no objection to, but the stories have been carefully selected and edited in such a way as to draw conclusions from one point of view which other biblical scholars would not agree with. I'm a Christian myself, but I really don't want Christianity to be taught in the schools. I especially don't want this version of Christianity, Christian nationalism, taught as accepted fact any more than I would want the teachings of Roman Catholicism or Sharia law presented as fact. Throughout the Bluebonnet curriculum, Christian nationalist views and conclusions are presented as historical, objective fact, whereas other religions and cultural beliefs are presented as what some people believe. This curriculum seems to not only be inferior at promoting reading skills, but also seems to be a clear violation of the constitutional separation of church and state by bringing one particular religious belief set. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Rutledge. Next, we have Mrs. Rebecca White.
Good evening. Thank you for having community input to give us another chance to work together to shape the future of our school district. I appreciate your dedication to our students and recognize the hard work you put into every decision. I am here because I have a deep concern for the curriculum currently under consideration. We know our intention is always to provide our students with the best educational experience, but I believe that this proposed curriculum falls short of the high standards our students deserve and the goals and expectations set forth in our district mission statement, framework, and learning profile. These standards being challenging and preparing our students to be critical thinkers, innovative problem solvers, and engaged future citizens of our world that businesses and organizations cry out for. Our students are the future leaders of our community. We must hold them to rigorous academic standards that push them to achieve their full potential. A high-quality curriculum is more than just a collection of subjects. It is the foundation upon which our students build the skills necessary for lifelong success. Furthermore, it is important that we recognize and respect the professionals who work directly with our students every day. Our educators have a deep understanding of what truly works in the classroom. They follow and adhere to the district standards. Their firsthand experience tells them that this curriculum does not align with best practices or the innovative approaches that can make a significant difference in our students' lives. Ignoring these experts and their expertise not only undermines our educators' professional judgment, but also risks lowering the quality of education that our students receive. I urge you to reconsider the adoption of this low-quality curriculum. Instead, let's commit to a course that prioritizes the needs of our students, demands excellence, and takes into account our experienced educators. By doing so, we're not just rejecting a flawed proposal, we're respecting the intelligence and potential of our young people, and we're honoring the professional integrity of our dedicated educators. Why risk being hasty and choosing something flawed, rather than taking our time and choosing excellence? Compelling a school district to implement a low-quality curriculum because it's tied to state funding is like building a house with cheap materials, just because someone else is paying for them. It might look fine at first, but it won't stand the test of time. We can work together to create an educational environment that challenges our students to excel, respects our teachers' expertise, and ultimately prepares our community for a bright and successful future. Thank you for your time and your commitment to excellence.
Thank you, Ms. White. Next, we're going to have Ms. Cassidy Vaughn.
Good evening. My name is Cassidy Vaughn. I am from San Angelo. I grew up here. I am a product of SAI ISD. I also taught in this district, and now I'm a parent here. I believe in public schools. Public schools matter to me. I want to see them thrive. That's why I'm here tonight asking you to vote no on the adoption of the Bluebonnet curriculum. I have reviewed this curriculum myself, and to be totally honest, I don't understand why this is even being considered. If there is some major benefit that the public doesn't know about, I'd love to hear it. I'm willing to change my mind if there's something I'm missing, but right now I'm just not seeing it. It's full of religious bias and ideology that has no place in public school. Public education should be fact-based, inclusive, and designed to serve all students. As a parent, I get to decide if, when, and how to introduce religion to my child. But adopting Bluebonnet takes that choice away, not just from me, but from every family in this district. If this curriculum is approved, there will be 0 secular education options in San Angelo. That sends a pretty clear message. If you don't align with this belief system, you don't belong here. Now, I have been told that I can opt my child out of the Bible-infused lessons, but that raises even more questions. Where will they go during that time? What will they be doing? Do we have the staff to support this? Will the already overworked teacher have to come up with extra lesson plans? Or, let's be real, are kids going to be stuck in the hallway doing busy work? What happens when kids start feeling isolated or targeted for opting out? As a former teacher, I know exactly who this is going to fall on, and that's the teachers. They're already stretched thin. Now they'll be stuck at the copy machine, answering frustrated emails, handling complaints, and trying to adapt a curriculum that doesn't even meet real academic standards. Instead of focusing on teaching, they'll be stuck doing damage control. And for what? There are other high-quality instructional materials out there that don't push religious bias or Christian nationalism. Bluebonnet doesn't offer any educational advantage over those. It's simply pushing an agenda. That is not the role of a public school curriculum, plain and simple. In fact, it's unnecessary, it's risky, and it's bound to collapse under pressure. Our kids and teachers deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Next, we have Ms. Marianne White.
Good evening. My name is Marianne White, and my son just graduated from Central High School after being in the district schools for just 2 years. His earlier years here were a combination of Ambleside School and homeschool. My husband and I chose Ambleside for one reason and one reason only, because they stress the importance of reading entire books from cover to cover, as written, and then reciting back in writing and orally, depending on their ages, what they learned from those books using the author's voice. I can say that before he went to Central during his junior year, he had read a 2-foot stack of books each year in junior and senior high school, as well as all the thinner books that you read during kindergarten and elementary. While I share many of the same concerns about our students being read to from scripts, not books, rather than experiencing the joy and the necessary process of reading the material out loud themselves, and the separation of church and state in education, my main concern is that our school board is rushing to implement something that many have not studied just because they're offering to give us extra funds to adopt this curriculum. I did a search to determine which school districts have said yes and which ones have said no so far. Denton and Spring Branch have said no entirely, while Humboldt ISD voted to use the math portion. Conroe voted yes to both portions. Of the 15 San Antonio area school districts, 6 voted no to both, 4 are still undecided, and 4 are voting for only the math curriculum, while 1 voted for the K-5 language arts. Several of these schools said that they will continue to use their own teacher-developed curriculums as they find them to be a better product. Note that I said teacher-developed. Those people who sacrificed 3 to 4 years of their lives to go to school to become teachers were asked to help develop the district curriculums. Midland, Odessa, Lubbock, and most all of the DFW area have not released their vote about the adoption, meaning that they're not rushing the process. One ISD asked for input from teachers, parents, students before they vote. Round Rock has formed a committee made up of curriculum experts, community members, parents, principals, teachers to study the material. Currently, Round Rock is leaning towards adopting the math curriculum, but are still undecided on the language arts. They stress exploring the curriculum in depth, looking at how it would impact their students and what is the best course of action. And that's all I'm urging, is that we do the same. Appoint a broad-based committee with all the stakeholders necessary, teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Next, we have Mrs. Karen Best.
Treasure Island, double-sided, off the internet, from TEA. Have y'all read Treasure Island? How many on the board has read Treasure Island? Long John Silver, you know the good stuff, the peg leg guy and all the good stuff. So, everybody's going to talk about what bothers them about this curriculum, and I've been here multiple times now to talk about the deficits that have to do with it. Last time I was here, I asked how many of the board had actually read the curriculum for themselves, and only 3 raised their hands, and I appreciate your honesty in that, by the way. It's a lot, right? And we go through a process where on a board we trust our administrators and the people who work, who tell us what to vote on, how to go forward, but we've never seen something as broken in a curriculum as Bluebonnet before. So I understand your trust in another curriculum coming. When's the last time y'all had this many people show up about a curriculum choice? You haven't, and for a lot of reasons. I'm avoiding religion in this one because so many others are going to say it more eloquently than I can. But what I can avoid is a script that when you take Treasure Island and you dissect it so that by the time you've read to page 5, there's 90 minutes and over 180 words of vocabulary in a book about Long John Silver. We have to learn about pirates around Africa and all of these other things instead of just being able to read the flippin' story. It's a great story, by the way. It's not just a yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum. It's about all kinds of wonderful things, like a coming-of-age story. And those are the things we're talking about adopting a curriculum because we want to develop character. And yet, in this rewritten, abridged version of Treasure Island, they've removed all of the character references that speak to the struggle. The same struggle that Luke Skywalker goes through and Harry Potter goes through and Frodo goes through. The things that make classical literature classics is removed by Bluebonnet in the rewritten text and replaced with 400 pages of forced script. I always run out of time here because 3 minutes isn't enough time to say how badly this curriculum sucks. But you know what? You guys are where the buck stops. The truth is, you are asking this community to vote for a $500 million bond because you have a vision for the future. For my vote tonight and for many other votes out here, and the referendum is tonight on that bond. What is your vision for the educational future of San Angelo? If it's Bluebonnet, then if I can't trust you with Treasure Island, how do I trust you with the bond? Would anybody like to pick this up? I've carried it around for 2 days. If you'd like to circulate it, I didn't want to pay to print another one.
Thank you, Mrs. Best.
Does anybody want it?
Next, we have Mr. Caleb Leonard.
Good evening. I actually had some stuff written down before I stepped foot into the administrative parking lot. But then, as I was making my way up here, I ran into a few people that I know in the administrative building, which I think I know almost every single one of you because I'm here way more times than I feel like a teacher should. And in doing so, I actually have I talked to a few people about the curriculum that's coming up, and it didn't necessarily change my thought process, but it did change what I was going to say. So I apologize that I don't have a script in front of me except a couple of notes that I jotted down. I am a teacher at a high school. I'm also a teacher at middle schools. Music is what I teach, not English. I don't really necessarily follow the standardized curriculum when it comes to the math and things because that's not my classroom. But I am a huge and very firm believer in communication and transparency. I also know that we always vote things like this every so often. Curriculum voting is not an uncommon thing. It seems like this is a very popular. This is very popular. I don't think it's the first time that I've actually heard of a curriculum getting voted on, and then hearing about it on Facebook and things. I'm going to talk very fast because I know I'm a yapper, and I'm really sorry. So here is actually something that I've learned a few things downstairs talking to a few people. I'm not going to ask you to vote yes or no either way on this. I was going to ask before. Now, if this is voted no, I would like to ask all of you if we can come up with a Q&A or an FAQ that the rest of the public can be able to understand this a little bit more. This weekend I got to look and review a little bit of what I could find on Bluebonnet, and unfortunately news sites can be very biased. And ChatGPT is wrong because they don't really know what it's talking about. So I would strongly advise, if this is voted no, to maybe have that panel of teachers or somebody to have a Q&A, so that way the community, who is, I can tell, is very outspoken about this, can understand more about this. Because I don't think any one of you are out to get any one of our students or any one of our children or your children. And I really do believe in honest and open and transparent communication. So I feel that if this is voted no, that is something that we could request if possible. It's my first time coming and speaking to one of these, that it isn't to celebrate my own students. So I don't even know if that's possible. And I don't even know if this is open to the community to ask for that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Next, we have Mr. John Best.
Good afternoon. Thank y'all for your service. I guess is the first thing I want to say. It's being an elected official is a difficult undertaking. We appreciate everything you do for our children and for the school district. So I'm speaking in opposition to the Bluebonnet curriculum. You know, we all want the best for our kids. That's the bottom line. We want the best for our kids. We have a great community. We have great children in our community, and y'all have the difficult undertaking of trying to chart the course for the future for our children. This, I'm going to be honest with you, my wife, Karen, has dissected this thing as much as she can, and I'm speaking really secondhand from what I've heard her talk about with regard to the curriculum, because she's gotten into it in detail. But what I know on a higher level is that we, I feel like we can do better than this curriculum in the Concho Valley. You know, just looking at the figures from the Adult Literacy Council, right? 28,000 people in our community can't read or understand written information. 1 in 5 can't understand written information. Literacy is important. It's critical. And quite frankly, from my perspective, from my profession and what I do, it matters. You know, 60% of adults in the criminal justice system, 85% of minors in the juvenile justice system are illiterate. That's a thing, right? It all comes back to roost in the future if we don't educate our children and teach them how to read, teach them, make them literate from an early age. So it's important. You know, maybe some of y'all have made up your minds about how you're going to vote on this curriculum. And the question, I guess, is why? Is it money? Does it have to do with money? I understand, and again, not the most educated, but I understand that there's money involved from the TEA for adopting the curriculum. But from what I understand, adopting another curriculum is about the same. I guess you get $40 as opposed to $60. And then Bluebonnet, if you adopted it, would give you an extra $20 for printing materials. And I've seen what my wife's printed out, and it's a lot of printing materials. I don't think it would be much of a net gain for the district if you went that route. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Best. Next, we have Mrs. Ginger Moore.
Hi. I was actually at the State Board of Education, and I did testify, and I did hear 100 people testify. And there was also a lawyer there for the State Board that did not feel that state and church were being a problem for this. So if the lawyers do not feel that way, I don't know how we can upsert what they are saying. But let me start with, if you have an issue with Bluebonnet, they have been begging people, and I actually did this at one point, but until Wednesday, they're still taking applications at the State Board for texas.gov/IMRA to make changes to Bluebonnet. So if you have time to come up here and complain, I suggest you try and make some changes to it. Also, I know that TLCA, Very Best, Cristobal, and I also talked to Bobby Ott at Temple Independent School District, and he's also has approved Bluebonnet curriculum. In November, prior to the State Board of Education meeting, about 80 Hispanics were praying in the middle of the lobby there for Bluebonnet curriculum to happen. Also during the State Board of Education meeting, there was many there that were for Bluebonnet. And I heard the ones that were against it, but I actually listened to more that were for it than were against it. And the paper and pencil printed materials are what I'm for. I need cursive from 2nd to 5th grade. Our kids cannot write their names. I also help with the Fort Concho Christmas, and I have the chapel in the school, and half of those people cannot sign their names because I ask them on the little chalkboard if they can sign their names. For TEA, the average initial cost, including the cost of teacher classroom materials, is $68.04 per child in K through 5 for the RLA. For any subsequent year, the average cost is $26 per child. This came from TEA for me today. The average initial cost, including the cost of teacher classroom materials for math, is $57.41 per child in K through 5. And then after that, it's $23 per child to maintain. Amplify curriculum, which you currently have, have you really gone through that one? I mean, the way you have Bluebonnet seems to be a target. But the cost of district, usually, this came from Temple, about $200,000 a year for Amplify. And that's what you have now. Bluebonnet is free. In fact, all the Texas schools, including Cornerstone or any of the schools, can use it. We just get, if you have a school district, you get a discount.
Thank you, Mrs. Moore.
You get $60.
Next, we have Mrs. Gretchen Smith.
So to finish out that last thought, $68 for reading and $57 for math means that $60 per kid, not per subject, won't cover half of the cost. Anyway, that's not actually what I came here to say. Last meeting, we had a really great show of CTE and robotics kids, right? We saw them with their robotics, we saw them with what they had made. We saw these videos where we showed them in the classroom buildings and doing all these things. We had all these kids who were doing all these hands-on, engaging, wonderful things. There was not a worksheet in sight. There was not a single teacher reading from a script to any of those kids. Those kids were our exemplary. This is who we want to point out as our highest achievement as a district, are these kids who do these things, right? At your next meeting, you're gonna have a bunch of music kids. Some of them I started on their instrument. I've been teaching music in this district for 15 years. You only learn by doing. You only learn to read by reading. You only learn to build by building. And 70-minute chunks of scripted isn't going to teach us anything. I mostly come here as the parent of 3 students who've been through SAISD, all of them special needs. One of them who is GT, 2 were on a 504, and 3 were special ed, which is fun to fit all that into just 3 children. Nowhere in this curriculum are modifications for SPED. Nowhere in this curriculum are enrichment for GT kids. Y'all, my GT kid at 19 years old last fall went to Azerbaijan as a delegate, an official observer for the United Nations Climate Change Conference. She's a Central High School graduate. She did not learn to care about the earth. She did not learn to do all those things to become the outspoken and powerful woman she is by doing a stack of worksheets. My special ed kid is also in college, and he's doing a phenomenal job. And as I was thinking through this, I was thinking of some of the things that I'm supposed to modify for my students as a teacher, as I'm required to, that aren't in this curriculum. To learn from audiobooks and videos, these are from IEPs. Fewer items per page, chunking, pacing, assessed by different means, frequent breaks, alternate projects, alternate assignments, small groups, extended time, to dictate responses, to capture your responses in an audio or visual format. All of these different things that we do, and yet you want the script to make everything the same. The best moments in my 19 years of teaching have come from teachable moments, where I get to kind of go off script and really dig into a question a kid asked or something they cared about. Y'all, the next time you go up those stairs, read them. They talk about innovative classrooms, creative, engaged lessons. They talk about all the things this isn't. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Next, we have Mrs. Bible.
Those who can't teach. This is a saying I've had a very interesting relationship with throughout my life. As a child, I had the absolute privilege of having my entire educational experience inspired by only the top tier educational providers. I had the utmost respect for every single one of my teachers, even the one I did not like, the one. I watched throughout my life as artisans crafted worlds, but with mere words, recreated events of history in such vivid detail and dropped me in to explore, engineered engaging, inspiring, and challenging experiments and experiences that challenged and shaped my perspective on the universe, its inner workings, gave numbers life and meaning, introduced me to arts, which gave my life meaning, and allowed me to express myself in ways I had not dared dream. In every aspect, I owe them my very existence. I knew that even then, yet this saying still lingered. Those who can't teach. I often pondered this as I grew older. How could these powerful, capable, intelligent, caring individuals be incapable of anything? Yeah, I let this color the view of my future. Anything but a teacher. Being a teacher would be failure. I had lofty inspirations. I couldn't contemplate any other path. For some reason, I had to dismiss teaching, though likely I knew even then the outcome of my story. So I entered my final year in college. I was married, pregnant, and studying wildlife biology. My then husband forbade me from taking a field job. Apparently, plants are too dangerous. He also said we didn't have the money for grad school, and I had to get a stable job so I could afford so he could afford to take chances with his career. So I was basically forced into the one thing I had absolutely sworn off, teaching. The moment I entered the classroom, however, I knew I was home. I had found my passion. The students I taught my first year were challenging. I had 10 preps. I was a new mom. I was teaching science with 0 supplies and 0 money, 0 budget. And no other teachers at the school I was teaching at, teaching my subjects. Everything about that year should have made me run. But I loved it. I built curriculum. I built clubs. I started at student council. And that wouldn't happen with Bluebonnet.
Thank you, Ms. Moe. All right, the next is Ms. Sarah Nagovitich. I'm so sorry. I tried, I apologize.
Hi, my name is Sarah Nagovitich. A lot of people have spoken about their concerns with lecture-style classrooms, with no room to actually teach. Others have expressed their displeasure with the way Christianity is a major focus of the curriculum. And while I agree with those concerns, I'd like to present a perhaps unique perspective. For those of you who don't know me, I am a published author of multiple books for teens. I also spent several years as a literary agent for middle grade and young adult books. Reading is my passion. Fostering a love of reading is something I see as crucial for our society. If the goal of Bluebonnet is to destroy students' passion for reading, then it gets an A+ rating from me. Here's just a few examples that I saw in the curriculum. In 3rd grade, students will get multiple days of being lectured on the brain and the nervous system for their language arts lesson. I say lectured because that's what the curriculum demands. The teachers don't need to use their vast knowledge or skills to create interactive, important lessons. No thinking needed. Simply read verbatim from the paper and move on. I'm sure every 8-year-old dreams of this kind of lesson. In 5th grade, they get to read sanitized modern favorites like Don Quixote, published in 1605, and Midsummer's Night's Dream, published 1600. Do you know what a dromedary is? It's a one-humped camel and a highlighted vocabulary word from Don Quixote. Such an important word to know. I've been in the classroom and I've tried to teach Shakespeare to high school students. To say it's a challenge is an understatement. God bless the teacher trying to explain Act 1, Scene 1 to 10-year-olds with concepts as classic as killing your daughter if she won't marry the man you choose for her. Yeah, that's Midsummer's Night's Dream. To wrap up in their 5th grade year, they get to read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, a truly great novel, published a little more modernly in 1950, but it'll be ruined with daily biblical lessons and stated focuses, such as students will explain how the connections between ideas in the novel and the Hebrew Christian Bibles contribute to the author's message. So inappropriate, not to mention it's an allegory story, which isn't a 5th grade teak. With 0 text published within the last 50 years for our 5th grade readers, it seems the curriculum is intentionally trying to make students hate reading. I fully believe that when someone is able to read and read well, they have the ability to learn anything. Of all the subjects that we teach, reading is the crucial, essential element for learning all the other subjects. In this author's humble opinion, we'll be doing these readers a grave disservice with the Bluebonnet curriculum.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, next we have Nicole Lozano.
Hello, my name is Dr. Nicole Lozano. I'm the very proud and active parent of an SAISD elementary student who actually just competed with her robotics team at state this past weekend. I'm here tonight to join the chorus of voices who have asked you not to adopt the Bluebonnet curriculum. You've heard from parents, teachers, community members, and I'm speaking to you specifically as a Jewish parent of a Jewish child. There are many issues, y'all, such as a 45-minute lesson and a 15-point reading asking kids to summarize World War II in a logical way as part of the 4th grade curriculum. That's part of Number the Stars. But really, having Christianity infused into my Jewish child's secular education is upsetting to me from both a religious perspective as well as an educational one. My daughter will be in 5th grade next year, and as Sarah pointed out, she would be required to read Don Quixote and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. In Don Quixote, I can't imagine 5th graders trying to read that story, but the curriculum also provides a definition of God, noun, almighty. But more distressing is the inclusion of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This book was written to imbue a fairy tale with the elements of the story of Jesus Christ. It's filled with overt Christian symbolism, and the entire conclusion is structured around the resurrection of a Christ figure and climactic battle for the soul of Narnia. I've read it. Each of you were provided a handout, that was me who gave you the handout, that highlights specific troubling issues, but there's 2 that I really want to point out. In Lesson 4, teachers are told to tell students that the character of Aslan is perhaps C.S. Lewis's most noticeable biblical allegory in this story. As we continue to learn about this character, you may see that some things are similar to things Jesus is described as doing. There is then a margin note called support that Christians believe that the prophecies in the Hebrew Bible were fulfilled by Jesus. In Lesson 9, they are directed to consider how Aslan's death is an allegory for Jesus and reminded that they learned about the death of Jesus in grade 3, unit 4, when learning about ancient Rome. One thing that I've heard repeatedly is that I would be able to pull my child from lessons that I object to. And I appreciate that in theory. But what happens when it's an entire book? Because I can assure you that my Jewish daughter, who is enrolled in a theoretically secular school, will not be allowed to remain for this 14-day unit, with each lesson ranging from 60 to 90 minutes. And as what was pointed out earlier, what happens to her socially from being pulled from that? What would she be doing in that time? Who's organizing that time? And why, within a secular education, is this something that I would even need to consider? And I'm struck by the idea that if we turn this on its face and instead integrated Jewish beliefs, there would be an uproar around this, even more so than what you have now. If this curriculum is adopted, it leaves no secular education in San Angelo, and it negatively impacts the education of students within the district. The curriculum itself goes against the mission of the district to engage all students in a relevant and inspiring education.
Thank you, Dr. Lozano. All right, next I have Sierra Matheson.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I took some time to open up Bluebonnet curriculum, go through the ELA units in multiple different grade levels. And as a previous teacher for 10 years that holds a master's in curriculum and instruction, K-12 literacy specifically, I found some very concerning issues. First, I want to address the fact that almost every unit asked for our children to sit through 40 to 75 minutes of whole group instruction before the text "consider taking a break" was even seen. I mean, let's be honest, I'm pretty sure most of you guys are starting to tune out already, and it's been, what, about 40 minutes? So imagine the 5-year-olds. And by the way, it's recommended for our kids to only sit for about 10 to 15 minutes before they get up, move, engage in activities. Next, I'm just blown away by the material being utilized. The questions and topics that I came across were, do you know the embargo, or do you think the Embargo Act will work? And what are the different positions held by the war hawks and the merchants in the U.S. in 1812? Oh, those were questions for a 7-year-old from their reading. So the point being, the pages focus heavily on Tier 2 and 3 vocabulary words, which is pointed out in the curriculum. They don't have enough support to actually help the students learn the vocabulary correctly. They overload the cognitive process for the students, and their eyes are just going to glaze over. Be like everyone. I mean, there's anyone who knows, medical stuff, but if someone hands you a medical pamphlet to learn all about the heart, you guys can read it, but can you understand it? So the instruction given to teachers give no direction to activate your child's schema either. And I can continue with all of the high vocabulary words that I know, but let's face it, this is just too difficult of material for these kids. So finally, I want to take a look at the little readers that are being given to the students, because they're poor examples of the syntax that we want modeled to our children. They lack rich, interesting stories. I mean, how many Aesop fables can you really read in first grade? Plus, looking at 5th grade, as mentioned, Shakespeare, he uses completely different diction that any students would be able to even digest. So Bluebonnet likes to use difficult text to look fancy, but rarely did the assessments when they were walking out of the classroom, the exit tickets, the activities, they never really aligned well with the actual objectives. So we need to push our children to be forward thinkers and ready to run our great state and nation. Please vote no.
Thank you, Ms. Matheson. Next, we have Mr. Jesse Ramon.
Thank you for having us, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I want to avoid repeating many of the same topics already described by the other speakers these past few weeks. Instead, I'd like to spend some of the remaining time calling this exactly what it is in using a definition from SAISD's Code of Conduct, which is a single significant act or pattern or acts by one or more directed at another that exploits the imbalance of power. This is the district's definition of bullying. And it's abundantly clear that the state of Texas is bullying statewide districts into adopting this problematic and controversial curriculum. You've all asked the same questions I have, such as, do we have alternatives? And what happens if we don't adopt this curriculum? And time and time again, we're told it's not perfect, but it's the best we have. And without it, funds are going to be withheld. And if that's not bullying, I don't know what is. If what was mentioned last time was true and the STAR test is being revised to align with the Bluebonnet curriculum, then there may appear to be no true alternative. We're being tricked into believing that this is a choice, which I find ironic coming from the state that pushes vouchers and financial incentives disguised as school choice. I think the biggest red flag for me is not the withholding of funds dedicated to the public education, but the financial incentives promoted within the curriculum, specifically the extra $20 for printing materials. The comments I've heard in favor of this curriculum boast about its heavy usage of paper and pencil and lack of electronic devices, citing how harmful the devices are to children. The irony is, the curriculum increases its usage of paper, then offers a monetary incentive for the printing of these papers. So they are giving you the cure to the problem that they created. Lastly, as it was previously shared, it's not perfect, but it's the best option we have available right now. Emphasis on right now. So unless I'm mistaken, there's no deadline for this to be considered. There's also no reason this can't be reconsidered in the future with necessary changes. This issue associated with this curriculum are too problematic, too controversial, and clearly riddled with errors and discrepancies. So you have an opportunity to resist on behalf of our children, on behalf of your constituents who have elected you all to make this tough decision. A decision parents and residents have loudly exclaimed for weeks now that they do not want this in our public schools. We'd be lying if we said the incentives are largely part of why this is being considered. So speaking of incentives, why not incentivize the state of Texas to explore the alternatives? The fewer districts that adopt this, the louder and clearer our message becomes. Our children deserve better, our teachers deserve better, and our districts deserve better. I encourage you all to vote no on this curriculum and explore the alternative curriculums that better suit our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramon. Next, we have Ms. Alexander Looning.
Hi, my name is Alex Lunning. I'm here to speak against SAISD adopting the Bluebonnet Learning Curriculum. I have listened earnestly to the information presented regarding Bluebonnet for the last 2 board meetings. I've also watched as much of the State Board of Education hearings that I can possibly stand, and because of that, I know that this curriculum barely passed the State Board of Education with a vote 8-7. I have read the entirety of the kindergarten and 3rd grade curriculums, as those will directly impact my 2 children at Bonham Elementary next year. I've also read extensively through the other grade levels as well. Unfortunately, what I have found is a curriculum that not only contains lessons regarding religion as required by the TEKS curriculum standards, but an entire K-5 curriculum rife with religious bias. It is true that religion is a necessary component of teaching political and historical context on certain subjects. But that is not what this curriculum is doing. It contains clear bias to a very specific type of Christianity, and I'm certain every family in the city has beliefs that don't align perfectly, because I know mine do not. And while there are mentions of other religious beliefs, these references are full of mischaracterizations and inaccuracies. And while parents can individually opt their students out of certain lessons, I know I certainly would, but I do worry that the curriculum has these ideas so gratuitously woven through each grade level that we'd have children in and out of class all year long. Not to mention, Dr. Mills was told last month that these alternative lessons do not meet TEKS standards, so those children would be at a disadvantage during class discussion and STAR testing. All of that aside, I am certainly no teacher. Do not have an expertise in this, but I am the mom of a current 5-year-old little boy and a little girl that was once a 5-year-old. And the long scripted lectures that our youngest students will be expected to sit through don't seem like the path towards the well-rounded, inspiring education I know everyone on this board wants to provide our SAISD kids. I know the other curriculums are not as easy to choose. They come with less financial incentive, but I believe instilling a love of learning in the children of San Angelo is the absolute priority of the members of this board, as well as the teachers and administrators in the district. The best schools in Texas are not adopting Bluebonnet, and I hope SAISD will be among them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have China Young.
Thank you. I am a product of SAISD, having attended Bowie Elementary, Glenn Junior High, and Central High School. First, I want to speak from a personal experience that I have that stuck with me since I was a student. When I was in 10th grade biology, I had a teacher that decided to teach evolution by creating a biblical timeline around the room. I think she believed she was doing her part to not offend the Christians in the room, but she clearly neglected any other religious practitioners. I found this approach to be very odd and noticed a few other students who became very uncomfortable as this lesson proceeded. Being a sophomore, I didn't have the experience advocating for myself in an educational environment like this. So even though I felt like this was inappropriate and I had the impulse to say something, I had no idea how to go about saying it. So I just sat there dumbfounded and have carried this memory with me since. I think this speaks to the ways in which our students probably don't have the tools to advocate for themselves if they might be in conflict with the way a lesson is being presented. Most of the conversation around curriculum seems to be about how parents feel about their child's education, with teachers taking the back seat to the conversation. Unfortunately, students' perspectives are often not anywhere near this conversation. We all want to believe we have the best interest of students in mind, but they ultimately become victims of our choices and might, like myself, continue to question the impact of those choices into their adult life. A specific example from the Bluebonnet curriculum is in the kindergarten lesson around the Golden Rule. Quote, "The text for today's story of the Golden Rule features references from Leviticus, part of the Hebrew Bible, which includes a section called the Torah, and from the book of Matthew, part of the Christian Bible's New Testament, along with references to Islam and Hinduism. The lesson then specifically references lessons taught by Jesus and Moses within the context of the Bible. The final section of the lesson simply says, quote, "Besides the two versions of the Bible, there are other versions of the Golden Rule in ancient books from other religions, including Hinduism and Islam," end quote. It then sums up the Golden Rule once more without any actual specific examples from those ancient texts. So much for including those other religions. I personally remember learning the Golden Rule as a child, but it was never tied to religion. It was presented as a basic understanding that simply exists in our culture and our society. I didn't need to know that its foundation came from religion to understand the concept of treat others the way you want to be treated. This is just one very small example of how centering religion in an otherwise incredibly simple lesson can actually complicate how students might understand that lesson. And it's no different than my sophomore biology teacher choosing to teach a lesson on evolution by using a timeline out of her Bible. This emphasizes how important it is to consider how we teach and not just what we teach. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move forward now with item 4 on our agenda, which is to conduct our Finance and Audit Committee workshop. And just for those who are present, we are going to move item 6 to after the report section of this, so that, thank you all for all being here. We'll move it up, but give us just a moment to get through some of these reports.
Thank you, Dr. Kingman. Our first report is our Management Oversight Report for Human Resources, and Dr. Skelton is going to help us with that tonight. Dr. Skelton?
Dr. Kingman, members of the board, thank you for giving me this opportunity to kind of talk through a little bit about HR. Just wanted to give you some 24-25 updates. Of course, there's a lot of rocks going on that we're moving, especially with recruitment, end of year things with HR, but wanted to give you a little oversight of the things that we're looking forward to for next year. One of the big things is Smart Find Express. This is part of the PowerSchool system, and it's an absence management system that we're looking into switching over for this next year. Part of that absence management system is putting everything online. What that does is it allows every employee in the district the opportunity to either call, text, use the app and website to put in absences. One of the things the district is working towards is making sure everything's automated. Of course, we have people behind the scenes double checking, triple checking, making sure that absences are connected to leave balances and things like that. But this system is because it's part of the PowerSchool system, we're actually integrating it in with our e-finance and everything else PowerSchool that we have. This will save us a lot of time and effort when it comes to leave. We still do paper leave. We double check all of that, but with this system, it'll allow us to integrate time clock and things like that. We formerly used Frontline, or ASOP, as you remember. It still allowed us to do automated absences, but it did not talk to e-finance, which we've had for a long time. So this is a great opportunity for us to switch over and make that move to automate all the processes. Our PowerSchool SubFinder system is the next piece of it. It also allows us to pick up absences through the app, through phone calls, through the website. It's a great opportunity for all substitutes from all ages to be able to connect. It's been a great thing for us with Frontline, but because Frontline didn't automate with our other systems, this is going to do the same thing plus with the back-end automation. When it comes to recruitment, we're right in the middle of recruitment. We've had 3 job fairs that we've been to. The first 2, Lubbock Christian University. That one was, if y'all remember, was when the snowstorm hit up there, so that was a little rough, but we made it through. We've gone through the Abilene, and then today we had the Tarleton State job fair. We're going to be going through those resumes and applications from those applicants. Tomorrow, from the group that they brought, it was a great report coming back from from our people that went, and we're excited about going through those applications. What we do is we follow up with every person that they talk to. We reach out to them saying, thank you for stopping by, joining our table. We'd like to talk more. These are the positions that we have available right now, but there's more to come. And then, of course, as you can tell, we're going to go to Texas Tech University. Yep. And then other places. Just saying. But we do have our job fair on April 12th. That's a Saturday, and that is, we hold that every year at Central High School in the Tucker Building, and that's a great opportunity for all of our groups to be able to join and have people come in and get jobs. One of the big things that we've been doing is the RAM Resident Program. We've been partnering with ASU. This is our second year to partner with ASU on the RAM Residents. It is a paid year-long residency for student teachers. It's a new track that allows us to pay students to be student teachers, which many of us didn't have that opportunity when we went through school. But it's a great plan, and those student teachers start the day teachers get here on August 4th. And then they finish May 23rd, the last day of school. And they are with them all year long. And last year we had 9, and they were all day one ready. It was incredible to see the growth from day one to their first official year as a teacher and the growth that they made. We actually hired 5 of the 9 that we had. The other 4 moved away, moved back home. We expect that. We always tell the student teachers that we're here to prepare them for day one. We call it day one ready. Your first day in the classroom by yourself. And our goal is to prepare them for that, not to prepare them to be a teacher at SAIC, but that is a benefit if you do. But we want them to be day one ready, and last year we had 5. This year we have 12 residents that are working with us at 4 campuses, and those 4 campuses are San Jacinto, Bradford, Lamar, and Fannin. We were scheduled to have 12 more residents next year, but ASU called us and said, we'd like to give you more, and we said, bring them. So we're projected to get 20 RAM residents. We're going to split them among 5 campuses, and we're going to try, if possible, to bring them into the middle school. There's a lot of logistics behind the certifications and middle school. Most of all these residents are early childhood through 6th grade, EC through 6. So some of them are special education, so we're going to try to get them, because special education is an EC through 12, is an all-level certification, we're going to try to push them into middle schools as well. So we're really excited about that, but next year it's going to be McGill, Bel Air, Crockett, Holloman, and Santa Rita are going to be our 5 schools, and then we're going to intermix them with some middle schools if we can. And those are some of the big rocks that we have going on. If y'all have any questions, be glad to answer anything for you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Jason, teachers from ASU, Texas Tech, all the places you've gone, are their numbers coming up a little bit more than what they were, say, like after COVID?
Clinical teachers?
Yeah, that want to be teachers.
It's a decline all over.
It's still declining.
It's declining. Yeah, we're actually starting to see more alternative certification teachers come out than student teachers across the nation.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Dr. Skelton?
I'm ready.
There are none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just as a note to the audience, we have major program overviews every month, usually during the pre-agenda, and so tonight's agenda concerned human resources, so we'll have another one next month. Next on the agenda is a summary of findings of TEA intruder detection audit conducted by the Educational Service Center staff. Mr. Walters helps us with that. This is usually a pretty brief report because we monitor concerns, but we don't publicly review them. So.
Yes, sir. And Dr. Moran, Dr. Kingman, and members of the board, once again, I thank you for your support and what you do for SAISD. Through the month of, end of January through the month of February, we had 1 IDA. Any findings or corrections that need to be made, if any, are being made at the campus level.
Scott, would you define the acronym there, IBA?
The intruder detection audit.
Okay, thank
you. Which Region 15 does for the state.
All right, thank you. Next, we have a facility update, and Dr. Brandon is going to help us with that.
Dr. Keeman, Dr. Moran, Board of Trustees, just a quick update. We did go through some of these slides last month, but then we met with all of the departments, walked the campuses, received their input, and so tonight we have wanted to let you know how we are going to proceed from here. Just as a reminder, a couple of charts, our campus needs support facilities charts. As monies have been spent on campuses with students, then there are areas within support facilities that have needs. And so as we've looked across the district in an effort to be efficient, we've looked at not only what those campuses or those support facilities need, but also the age of those facilities. In particular, we were concentrating on Blackshear, Carver, and Sam Houston. As you see, all of those from 66 to 75-year-old campuses, infrastructure issues, HVAC, electrical upgrades. So the question being, can we move students and staff to a facility that is better suited, more efficient, safer for those individuals? We did star the 2 Day and Rio Vista elementaries because those are, the Head Start programs are there with the Council of Governments. Academic considerations will be that Sam Houston, which is our special education, special programs staff, will move to the top floor of the Central on Oaks campus. Carver will move to the annex. This allows us separation between the annex and the main there at Oaks, but now we have separation between the principal and the AP for those 2 campuses. Now they'll be together where they can go, and if one of them is off for training, then we have the other one that can provide leadership on either campus quickly. We also have the PAYS to be housed on the lower floor of the Central on Oaks campus, and then you can see there where that helps with the 2 administrators. It also helps with our school resource officer, where you take 3 different sites. Now with those consolidated, one school resource officer can provide that safety net on those campuses. You consolidate and you can have one receptionist secretary answering the calls and sending the calls out to different departments. So as you think about the efficiencies for our taxpayers across the district, we reduce staffing needs, we reduce cost related to safety and security. We see utility savings, gas, electric, water, sewer. We have reduced maintenance cost between going from 3 facilities to 1, and then eventual property casualty savings on vacated properties. Just wanted to give you a heads up, see if you have any questions about those moves.
I got a question. Now, I was going to ask you the PAYS. PAYS will be, you said it's going to be on the bottom floor. Is it going to be the bottom floor of the annex, or is it going to be on the bottom floor of the new addition?
Of the main.
Of the main. And then the Carver will all be in the
annex.
In the annex building.
Yes, sir.
On the bottom floor as well?
Bottom floor of the annex.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure of. All right, thank you.
And just for clarity, the bridge program will stay at its current site?
Yes. After we looked through all the different needs of our special needs students, just the campus had some logistically, just in and off, in and out of the campus, some questions there, and then some needs that they had, plumbing type facility issues. So at the moment, we feel like it'd be better for Bridge to remain on their campus.
Any additional questions for Dr. Brandon? All right. Thank you, Dr. Brandon. Appreciate that. Next, we have a bond presentation from Dr. Moran.
Okay, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and so I thought it might be good to go back and revisit some of the projects that are being presented to the community for consideration, and we're just going to work through the major projects by campus. So at Lakeview, what I'm sharing with the community is the current facility, and the next slide shows by age of building. So you can see what is constructed and the coinciding year. But the next slide shows you what the bond provides as an opportunity for the community to consider. If you'll notice on the left, the blue portion of that would be the renovated locker rooms, noting that some of that area is not currently air conditioned. Then you'll notice on the bottom there the pink salmon color, that is a new mariachi practice facility, like a band hall, if you will. And then on the far right, the new CTE center that would be connected, and then a renovated old CTE center that's just above that. And so that would be what would happen on the campus. And while you're looking, you can kind of see to the north, the practice field there and the tennis courts. So the next slide zeroes in on the athletic facilities, and the proposition presents turfing softball and baseball, expanding the parking lot, creating a concession restroom area for that facility, returfing the soccer football field, adding bleachers, and this would be kind of a sub-varsity type setup where you might have 9th or JV football or 9th JV or varsity soccer games, and a fully lighted field. Currently, there's one telephone pole with 2 lights for that entire field. So in the morning, those kids are in the dark. And then you can barely see this, but at the top of that picture, you can see additional tennis courts, which would mean they would have 8 total tennis courts. Currently, they have 6, and only 4 have lights. So this would be adding 2 to make 8, and then lighting all of the tennis courts. So that would be Lakeview. The next slides walk into the Central High School conversation, and this is current campus with little orange people walking around. And the next slide shows by building by date. And while you look at this slide, you'll notice that it's very unusual for a high school campus not to have facilities on the campus that can offer support to scheduling. For instance, you don't see softball, baseball, football, soccer practice, athletic facilities that would allow for students to remain on campus during the day and be scheduled throughout the day. So at Central, you have athletics really before and after school if they're needing the facilities at the stadium. There is one turf field that's used for soccer and band. So as we work through this, you'll kind of see the progression. But the bond election presents this. This would be phase 1 if you're looking at a long-term solution for Central. And this would be a new theater, a new cafeteria, a new gymnasium or arena, taking the current cafeteria and remodeling it for health science and culinary arts CTE. Then if the community wanted to proceed in, let's say, 10 years, this would be phase 2. Phase 2 would begin combining the campus and connecting the buildings so that the students weren't outside all of the time. There'd be the opportunity to be outside, but you'll also notice there's some fields that are added to the campus. And then phase 3 would be the third bond election down the road that would add softball, baseball, and a new pool. And that way you'd have everything there on the campus. A couple things to note. There's a city street that runs by the band hall and the JROTC, and we'll have to engage with the city on that conversation. We've already begun the conversation, but more formally. And then in everything I talk about tonight, remember there's deferred maintenance that will be addressed in the amount of $40 million, and there's safety and security upgrades that impact every campus in the amount of $8 million. So fencing, secure keyless entry, all of those conversations are taking place. The next is Glenn. And with Glenn, you can see the current building, and then the next slide by year of construction. And then the next slide gives you an idea of what the vision would be for Glenn, and that would be a new Glenn Middle School built on the current practice fields that faces Johnson Street, and then a demo of the current building and adding the track football field there to help those students with adequate facilities. The next slide, Fannin, I think everybody knows we used emergency relief funds to construct some buildings there at Fannin, which is a very unusual thing. Usually that doesn't happen outside of a bond election, but the next slide at Fannin shows you the current facility, and again, the next slide by year of construction. You can see the salmon pink color, and then the next slide would be the bond election, adding the office, library, cafeteria, kitchen area, and changing the campus layout. The front of the building would face east instead of south. That's Fannin. Then McGill, you'll see the same kind of progression in thinking. The next slide will show you the current facility, and the next slide by year of construction, and then the next slide, if the bond is approved, what it would do to the campus, and you can see kind of the finished product there. And then the final effort would be at Crockett. Crockett's cafeteria and kitchen are very old and inadequate. The next slide shows you by year of construction, and the third slide shows you the new cafeteria kitchen with several additional classrooms, I think 4 or 6 at least, there to accommodate students as we consolidate elementaries and begin to move students into adequate spaces in the district. So I believe that's it. So really that's what we're showing folks everywhere I'm going, talking through the bond. This is the conversation. I thought the board would benefit from updated pictures and hearing that conversation. Any questions?
Any questions for Dr. Moran?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
In looking at Glenn Middle School, which I'm very excited about the opportunity to possibly build a new middle school, but I'm curious about why we would need another football field when there's a stadium right there.
Yep. So that's a good question, and the answer really is every campus should have its own facilities, because sharing facilities really is problematic. When you have varsity sports using the stadium, multiple high schools using it, oftentimes the middle school becomes the one that has to give up their opportunity. And so, the question is, what is our standard for a campus? At Lincoln and at Lone Star, we have those facilities. We want to be mindful of the opportunity to provide those for all of our kids, regardless of the campus they're on.
Okay. Any additional questions? All right. Thank you, Dr. Moran. I think we're going to hit pause for a moment on reports.
Yeah, we're going to hit pause for a moment on the reports, and we're going to go to item 6. And Dr. Gomez is going to help us with considering House Bill 1605 and instructional materials.
Dr. Kingman, Dr. Moran, and members of the boards, we've had many conversations about House Bill 1605 and what has us here this evening to make some decisions moving forward. So through House Bill 1605, as we've already discussed, came to be the IMRA process as we now know it. The IMRA process, again, we like acronyms in education, so that's your Instructional Materials Review and Approval, creates criteria that the State Board of Education review and approve. And the State Board of Education is separate, I know we've had questions about this, from the Texas Education Agency. So through this process, there must be TEKS coverage, because every educator in the state of Texas is required to cover the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills for their grade level and their content area. Additional criteria include quality, that the material must be suitable for the grade level and the subject area that's being taught, free from factual error, no harmful content, and other statutory compliance. And the last key addition through this process has been the parent portal compliance. Additionally with that is the parent transparency that requires school districts to establish a process for the materials to be reviewed, and it requires publishers to make IMRA-approved textbooks accessible to parents via the internet. You'll notice, and we've highlighted this multiple times, the newest addition, this has never been part of the process before,
are state-owned textbooks. So under House Bill 1605, what that means is the Texas Education Agency was required to develop state-owned textbooks that are subject to approval by the State Board of Education. Part of that process provides optional teacher training for districts to utilize, the materials, and a related grant for educator prep programs. Now, it's very timely that Dr. Skelton gave his overview this evening. We are so blessed to have Angelo State University right here in our community, and it is a true blessing to have our Rams residents. Mr. Gallegos asked a key question and said, are we seeing an increase in teacher candidates coming to the profession? To which Dr. Skelton replied, no. In fact, this spring, right now in San Angelo ISD, we have a total of 7 clinical teachers, 7 overall. Of those 7, there is only 1 EC through 6 candidate. That means only 1 candidate pursuing certification, the elementary grade levels. So if we did not have those 12 RAM residents, we would be even in a more difficult situation, especially at our elementary levels. A part of this process, this is another key change, are the TEKS review and revisions that come to be with this. I'm going to show you a timeline that we've reviewed before, so I'm going to spend some more time in a second. We've also talked about in statute, school districts are not allowed to use what's called the 3 queuing system. I sometimes joke and say in a former lifetime, I was a reading specialist and a primary teacher. Really, that was just 29 years ago when I myself taught early readers and then served to be a reading specialist. I was trained, as many of us were, on this 3 queuing system. So if you're like, I'm not a reading teacher, I might be a researcher, but I've never taught a child how to read, what that meant specifically was meaning, semantics, and visual. Does it look right? Does it sound right? And does it make sense? Which are around what now, the science of reading, which we are required to teach and learn as educators. When you know better, you do better. And so the 3 queuing system has been banned, and no resource can refer to that for phonics instruction. And then lastly, this is so key, for teacher protections. Teachers cannot be required to use their planning time to create initial instructional materials without having the additional supplemental duty agreement. And I know that we have discussed that, and what that would mean would be additional compensation if teachers were having to create those materials. So to recap this timeline, I know timeline has come up. Individuals have asked, well, how did this timeline come to be? Are we rushed in this decision? So we'll recap this. During COVID, materials were referred to as CER, or COVID Emergency Release Versions. Began in 2 areas around English language arts for elementary levels, K-5. And then you'll notice when it says knowledge, we've talked about the difference between knowledge and skills. When it's referencing K2 skills, English and Spanish, that's the explicit phonics instruction. Then in math, K-5 for Eureka, and then for high school and secondary, 6 through 8, Texas Math Solution or Carnegie Learning, you might hear it referred to. So you can see the timeline there, where House Bill 1605 came into play, and how those COVID emergency release versions have now transitioned into Bluebonnet learning. When we talked about the process for TEKS revisions, you can see how the standards TEKS revisions used to be a multiple year process where the State Board of Education, they would develop the standards, they would approve those standards, then there would be a materials review, then 5 years later, districts would adopt materials. And then finally, by year 6, those materials would make their ways into the hands of teachers and districts. And then you also notice the state accountability portion where state assessments are used. And there would be a timeline where you had new standards being adopted, and staff had not had the opportunity to teach those standards for the state assessment. This is just another way of looking at it, but if you refer to the bottom portion there with a new review process, there is an annual approval of materials that can occur without changes to those Texas essential knowledge and skills. So instead of a 5-year to 6-year process, you have a shorter process there. Meaning in year 1, the State Board of Education can review materials. Year 2, districts can adopt materials. And by year 3, those newly adopted materials are available in schools. We have not had conversations around social studies, not trying to just highlight that, but if you know any social studies teachers in secondary, they've gone multiple years without the state approving and adopting new materials. So that brings a lot of challenges to teachers having to create those materials. Mr. Mears, will you click on the second one? Now, I know you can't read this, especially if you're sitting in the audience, but I point this because this comes straight from the State Board of Education and the timeline. So when people talk about bienniums and funding and entitlements, it is so very small. But the conversation and the vote presented to you are around 2 content areas and 2 grade level spans. So specifically, we just reviewed the process. In that very small print, first row, says January through June 2024. That was the EMRA review for Reading Language Arts K-5 and Phonics K-3. That's what puts us here now for a vote on instructional materials to get them in the hands of staff. So just as a reminder, the materials to consider are only K-5 Reading Language Arts and K-3 Phonics. Now, if you can read this really tiny print, you will see that secondary RLA, because there's no mention of resources for secondary RLA, those would not become available to teachers until 2030. Also, the other area that we have to decide on is K through 8 mathematics and high school mathematics, specifically Algebra 1. So again, going back to what you saw on the timeline to what you see on this very small chart. In January through June of 2024, the EMRA process called for a review. Then there was the approval in 24-25, making 25-26 the EMRA implementation for K-8 mathematics and Algebra 1. So I apologize for that very small print. This is straight from the State Board of Education calendar and timeline. We'll go back to the slide deck. Okay, so when you talk about funding, because yes, there is a funding, regardless of what materials are accepted or approved by the Board of Trustees. So you have your regular biennium allotment. This is where vocabulary word is very specific. So you receive your regular allotment for student enrollment to have enough instructional materials. Now please note, because this is very confusing for individuals, that's one pot of money for all instructional materials, including print, digital, and devices. The State Board of Education also requires that TEKS for technology are specifically taught. So there is a requirement to teach students how to properly use devices, and there's also the requirement to teach handwriting. For the additional entitlements that we have discussed, that's on top of the regular allotment. The only way districts can access those additional entitlements is if they adopt a State Board of Education approved instructional material. So we've gone through these pages. It's simply a review. You can see companies listed here. There are 3 pages of companies. I want to stop right there for a second. And on the first slide, on the orange box, we talked about the requirement under House Bill 1605 for a state-owned textbook. So you will notice the Texas Education Agency listed. And you will note the resources that the state agency owns are Bluebonnet learning. This is a review of the slide where we discussed what I just recapped with you, the regular allotment, then the 2 potential entitlements depending on what a school district chooses to use. Now, additionally, there's been conversation on the timeline and not making rushed decisions. We could not agree more, especially if you're an educator that has an instructional resource for multiple years. The difference in this process is the ongoing revisions that are a requirement under House Bill 1605. So when we talk timeline, whatever resource a school district adopts is ordered through the EMAT system. That's the way you place your order, that's how you submit your request. The EMAT system closes March 28th and is down the entire month of April, allowing it to reopen in May. So people might think, well, the school year hasn't started. That's great. There are over 1,000 school districts in the state of Texas. So if a school district submits their order, at the 1st of May, you may or may not have teacher additions and materials to have in teachers' hands who very much want them over the summer and before school starts so they can review those materials. However, you're in a queue, an ordering system of all the other districts in the state of Texas. What I can tell you in my 29 years as an educator, if you have a delayed rollout of a resource, it sets the tone for your entire year. Teachers need whatever the adopted resource is because they are the deliverer of the craft in their classroom. And delays on receiving those resources does create extra barriers for whatever is adopted. And then we have also continued to address parents have the right to review all instructional materials and the right to remove a child from the class or activity. So that's simply a recap. Was not trying to skip through any of that too quickly. We've just had multiple conversations, and so I just wanted to highlight what has been discussed on multiple occasions.
I have questions for Dr. Gomez.
You said that it could be a delay, like they shut it off in May? Or?
They shut it. It will close this year effective March 28th, and it will reopen in May.
And that includes all the material, like, say, like if whatever we decide to do today.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, will that take preference? Meaning, okay, if you don't do it, if you don't take this other one today, and you want to order another one, a different curriculum, would it be last, or would that Bluebonnet be first?
No, it doesn't change
It just cuts it off.
It just cuts off the system, so you have no access. There are also additional parts of the process that a school board is directly involved in. You will know and be familiar with the instructional materials certification, where that has to be presented to the board. Well, a district can't certify the instructional materials until the district knows what instructional materials the Board of Trustees is adopting. So we can't present that to you for your review and consideration because we haven't yet selected the instructional materials under the State Board of Education timeline. So just locally here for our district, the regular board meeting is March 24th. If there is a vote on instructional materials for that regular board meeting on March 24th, there would be a presentation because it needs to be by May 1st, but also in full transparency, if we want materials to be in teachers' hands before they start the school year, an order needs to be placed. That's not rushing a timeline, that's full transparency of what teachers want to be prepared in their classrooms. So on March 24th, the instructional materials certification could be presented. Depending on what materials are adopted, there could potentially be an open education resource transition plan that a district has to have approved before you can access entitlements. So for sure, there's one additional process before any orders can be placed in the system, and potentially there's two, depending on what is adopted.
Other questions from Dr. Gomez? Sorry.
Yeah, I got some questions. In regards to our current curriculum, is it an option to remain with our current curriculum? Is that even an option?
So I want to be really specific because a lot of things can be generalized. So are you talking specifically for everything? Or how about we recap our current curriculum?
Yeah,
okay?
like Amplify.
Yes.
K
So
through
currently,
5.
in the 23-24 school year, the district went to the CER version of Amplify for K2 skills. With the 24-25 school year, the district expanded to 3-5, which skills, remember that's phonics. We have a lot of words in education here. So in K2, your skills component for phonics is separate from the knowledge portion. Okay, so with this school year, the knowledge portion was added to K2, and Amplify, RLA, which skills and knowledge is combined, was expanded through 3-5. Then in terms of, because there's been a lot of talk about RLA, but remember we have the 2 different grade spans and the 2 different content areas to vote upon. So for math, with the 24-25 school year for 3-5, Amplify is the version of the COVID emergency response. The current free version is what the district went with, in addition to Algebra 1 Carnegie. So if the question is, could the district stay with the COVID emergency response? You could, yes. Please note for the state board approved instructional materials entitlement, you will see Amplify Education, partial subject, English phonics. So that would be the skills only component, and a district could stay with that. But you will notice that on the state board approved instructional materials, there is no mention of the knowledge component.
So we couldn't stay with our current knowledge component?
No, sir. Not for the entitlement. You'll also note that in the areas that I mentioned for Eureka, the only to stay with that, it's not on the state board approved unless you went with the states, because Bluebonnet for Eureka and Carnegie are the Texas versions with the full alignment according to the state board approved of it, State Board of Education for Texas specifically.
All right, thank you.
Other comments or questions? So I have a few comments, and then we'll go from there. I do think however people vote here, I think it's important that when there's this much discussion as far as a community, that everyone understands where, as a board, we are. So I'm going to say where I am, and then we'll see what happens from there. So the issue for me, and Dr. Gomez, you have to stay up there so in case I have questions, is right now we're not an A district. We, as far as the state classification, and whether we believe that students should be graded on one test or not, the reality is the state is creating a curriculum, and then they're going to score us on a test that decides how they're going to rank us for our community. We don't have to think that's fair, we don't have to think that's right, but that's a reality of how the state is going to do this. And so the idea that there are options here is true, and I'm not disputing that we can all have opinions on what those options are, but for me, the fact of the matter is we have 7 campuses with improvement plans right now. And we're going to ask our teachers to not be given the key to the test as far as what the curriculum the state's approving. I do think that there's I can't, from the things that I have read, and I get that there's still things that are not clarified in Bluebonnet, that there's very strong possibility that some of this curriculum will be excluded by the courts. I think it's likely and almost assured that some of this curriculum, if we adopt it, will be excluded locally.
I would completely agree with that statement.
But the reality is, the same way we have to trust teachers with their craft, we have to trust teachers whether we believe in the Bible infusion or not. You have to trust the fact that teachers can do damage on either side of that, whether it's to Christian students or non-Christian students. And the reality is, our teachers, other than parents, are likely the people with our children in the most vulnerable times anywhere already. But with that being said, we can't not provide them a curriculum that they can go create their own curriculum without finding more money, which we don't have. And there's also the possibility, if you look through some of the records from the legislature, that they may require the professional development of all teachers to have Bluebonnet, whether you adopt it or not, in the next 2 years. And whether the TEKS is written to match, or the Bluebonnet was written to match the TEKS, is another discussion of pretending we have an option. But the reality is, from everything I read, the TEKS is going to align with Bluebonnet. That's what the State Board of Education is telling us, and that's what they're going to grade us on. Now, I do think that it has to be transparent, and I think someone brought up a FAQ idea for everybody to explain exactly whatever happens tonight. He said no, but the reality is yes or no. The district should have an FAQ about why we decide to do, and it should be a one-pager, and it should be succinct, and it should be as clear as possible, and it should be everywhere, because this has been a disputed discussion. But I would also, before we get to making a board action, I would also propose as a board that we separate K through 8 math and algebra 1, if someone was going to make a motion one way or the other. And let's vote on that, because I haven't heard as many discussion regarding K through 8 and algebra 1. And let's vote on that, and then let's look at the K-5 ROA as a separate vote. And I have checked legally we can do that based on the motion that was written. So that would be my proposal if someone wants to make a motion one way or the other.
Dr. Kingman, I've been in the same boat you have for the last couple of 3 months. I've endeavored to do as much research as possible to make a decision, adopting or not adopting this curriculum. And I thank all the folks that came tonight to speak on behalf of either yes or no of how you like it. I've also received numerous phone calls and emails about approval and intent and dissent. But in fact, the way that the state has created these lessons that align with the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, and the ELPS, the English Language Proficiency Standard, have embedded supports to help secure that the teachers have a better chance of scoring higher on the STAR test than not. And that's how the state looks at us. That's how the community looks at us. That's how you guys are looking at us tonight, is how we see, how you see us compared to how the state ranks us. And it's a terrible thing, but that's what we have to pay attention to, in addition to what Dr. Kingman was stating earlier. So, I mean, again, there's some instructional review on this thing, and that would be a great, I think, proponent to this. It would help the district to have a committee set up that actually helps with review of this. So, saying that, again, Bluebonnet right now is the only State Board of Education approved open educational resource that fully aligns with the TEKS that push toward the STAR test.
I mean, I would like to make a comment. I've had multiple discussions with teachers and other board members, and I don't think the financial impact I don't think it's been brought up at all, frankly, from my conversations. I don't think the extra money is yeah, I think it's really more about performance and truthfully trying to put a curriculum that's best for our children. And while, I've looked at tons of stuff on Bluebonnet, and there are obvious, there's some religious infusion built in there. It's obvious, it's infused in there, but it's not just, it's not all over. It's not blatant. And most parts of it that I was reviewing are just normal, everyday type of stuff. It seems wholly unnecessary, frankly, that it's in there at all, but they put it in there. And at the end of the day, we've had people come up and say how we still have so many people illiterate in our world. We've had this curriculum or previous curriculum for years and years, and there's still these people that can't read. So it's not Bluebonnet that's making them illiterate. There's a lot of problems with curriculum over the years, whether it's related to the political stuff now or not. I think the state has put us in a situation where really we don't have any good options. But to outright throw out Bluebonnet because of the religious stuff that we can, as you mentioned and Dr. Kingman mentioned, we can exclude some of that on our own is very nice. We don't have to take every bit of this verbatim. We can edit it locally. And I think that's important to remember, that no matter what we decide tonight, if we ultimately decide to go Bluebonnet, as a district, we can take whole parts of this out, and the parents don't have to elect to take their children out of certain sections. The district can do that independently. Now, are we going to take all of the religious stuff out? If it got elected, I don't think that would be possible, but I think there's some controversial parts that could be edited out. And I think that would be very prudent as a district to have a low bar, low threshold for considering such an action. But to rule out a curriculum completely because of some obvious religious overtones, I think is not going to be in the best interest of our children, especially with the lack of other alternatives. Because I did look at the other high quality, or I forget the acronym y'all use, but the high
State
quality.
Board approved instructional materials?
Yeah, that one. The Save Us, if I'm saying that right. I mean, I looked at that extensively too, and a lot of the literature comments about reading books and trying to get kids to love reading. I mean, it has some books in there too, but it's not like, I have a list of some of the ones that the fifth graders read. None of these are, I read through some of them. None of these are going to be things that force kids to love to read. I mean, I think a lot of the curriculum is very similar in a lot of ways. And I'd be afraid that if we were to go a completely different course, because Bluebonnet is a version of Amplify in essence. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The teachers are already familiar with Amplify. They already know it well. If we were to completely go a different direction, how long for the teachers to become comfortable with that and proficient in that to teach it well when they already have something that is 70%, but Bluebonnet is already 70% Amplify anyways, and they already feel really good about that? Why would we go a completely different direction? So those are just some of my thoughts. I do think that there's some more legal stuff that's going to come out of this in the future, and some of this we may not have to make that many decisions on anyways. But I do appreciate everybody spending as much time on this as I have, and I appreciate everybody coming and expressing their concerns. Do you have, I guess this is a good time, do you have anything to say to some of the comments that were said publicly?
Well, you mentioned that every religious connection could not be excluded, and we've discussed that in a prior meeting. So to clarify, a district could not throw all of that out. You would lose the integrity to the standards alignment. And going back to what we're required to do as Texas educators is to cover the Texas essential knowledge and skills. So that's why it could not all be thrown out in its entirety. But you are exactly correct that districts have local discretion on what they adopt and how they implement. What any district would be required to do to meet the requirements of House Bill 1605 is the parent transparency. So if any revisions or modifications are made, that has to be available for parents to see.
Can I ask a question, because I got distracted in my talking? I meant to ask. So in whatever we've had curriculums every year, we've probably, unfortunately, maybe to the detriment of our district, changed curriculums, I think 3 or 4 times since I've been on the board. And I think the reality is, when we talk about good districts and what they're doing, they're not changing curriculums. And that may not be because the curriculum's great, but it's because the teachers can internalize it and actually teach instead of, like, I remember in my own profession, like day one, you're given 8 steps to a procedure. And like all you can remember is 8 steps. But like that's not how you do the procedure. And so to clarify with that, I just want to make sure, like, if a teacher has internalized what is the TEAC of that day, as long as they stay on their
pacing,
thank you, they're covering the TEAC for that day, they can cover that TEAC with whatever they want as long as it's following the TEAC.
Well, whatever they want is a very broad statement.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, thank you.
But I would like to point out, because what continues to come up with the HQIM, the criteria, you'll notice the criteria that we've covered multiple times. And nowhere on this criteria does it say read a script. But that's what continues to come out. Well, if we're not reading the script when someone walks in, then in essence, we're in trouble. And I totally say that is a false statement. No one is saying you must be holding your TE, reading word for word. So, however, there is a big difference. You cannot walk in and just pull it out and wing it, not with the depth of the high quality instructional material. So you must have internalized the lesson in advance to know what has to be covered.
Can I comment on that, Farrah?
Absolutely.
When you say you can't just walk in and read the script, you could, but that is not what a good
I said you
teacher
can
does.
walk in and just wing it. So for some of us who've been in this profession for a long time, you
Yes.
must be prepared.
Right. And even if a very qualified teacher, 30-year teacher.
Yes, ma'am.
High qualified teachers always read a script. Well, I don't care what script is, the night before. We're looking at it, we're deciding how we're going to teach it, how we're going to differentiate instruction, how we're going to meet our GT, how we're going to meet our special ed. You do that as a teacher. So when you read a script, if I'm reading the script, there may be something in the script that I've never seen before. Then I'm like, that's amazing. But the next day at school, a teacher with, where I'm talking, she's not going to, you wouldn't expect to walk in and see her reading a script. No way. So that is not what I'm hoping, and I feel confident because I've talked to a lot of people, y'all teachers a lot. That is not what we want a teacher to do. We do not want a robot. We want a teacher that has a craft, has a skill, and when we walk into their classroom, we want to say, wow, that teacher teaches it that way. What is she teaching? She's teaching foreshadowing. I go into the next room, she's teaching foreshadowing, but you know what? She's doing it a little twist, her way. Both children are learning. Both children are going to be successful. And all the years that I was in SAISD, I was always told we will never put a teacher in a box, because then we take away their craft. Some teachers need to be in a box.
Correct.
And we know that. Some teachers need to be in that box. They need to be given a script. They need a tight hold. We need to be monitoring for whatever reason. Maybe they're an alt-served. And they said, I want to be a teacher today. And for that, we celebrate, but we help them, we guide them.
To be successful, yes, ma'am.
Right. Those that went to school, especially, let's take a high school teacher. Their craft is their subject. I could never, my craft is math. I could never walk into a biology classroom and tell a biology teacher what I don't know their craft. And if they're high school, that's all they've done for years. And so I say all that I will always stand back and have faith in the teacher. And if my child is in a room and my faith isn't in that teacher, I'm going to have those conversations. Things may happen. And that's my role as a parent, right? But I'm not here to micromanage a teacher. I don't think they want to be micromanaged. And whatever the curriculum is, it's a curriculum. It's not I'm going to get up and on my calendar, I'm going to say this word at this time or do this for any curriculum. And I spoke on this last board meeting about Saxon. Saxon was a little bit like that. They wrote your quiz for you. They wrote the test for you. They had the homework problems. They had the lesson. We taught that. But not every day did I teach it exactly the way and the teachers around me. We didn't teach it the way Saxon said because some days I didn't agree with that. Did I teach the teak? Absolutely. Did I teach the pace? Absolutely. The pacing is important. You don't want to get to the end of the year and you haven't covered all of your teaks. So those two things go hand in hand. And it's something you have. Teak is what you have to do. The pace is how the pace you have to do it. The curriculum is a tool. And you can have many tools. Teacher pay teacher is a tool. I've seen teachers buy stuff off that and they go, that is an amazing thing. All of these are tools. My fellow teacher is my tool. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm understanding that right, that as a teacher, you do not have to read a script every day.
No one is going into a room saying she or he are not reading the script.
Okay. I just wanted to absolutely make sure I'm on that same page.
Also like to point out what we all hold so dear in the learner profile and the 4 C's. So I want to point that out, that we want students to be critical thinkers, collaborators, communicators, and they need to be talking as well. Now, when you move to a new instructional resource, Dr. Mills asked this, we've been using it 2 years. It takes time for any educator to learn the new resource. Already our summer professional learning is, okay, you've had 2 years with this resource. Now, how do we stay true to our SAISD learner profile and our 4 C's with student engagement? How do you build those in? It does not say on Amplify or Eureka on page 64, turn and talk to your neighbor. That's the craft of teaching. I've been directing this long. I've been reading this long. Where do I build that in? That's the engagement, and that's what you call the craft of teaching.
I think it's important that the district continue to promote that with our teachers. I know we do. But reviewing this literature or the curriculum, I found that the teaching guides to be actually very helpful as a parent. I'm not a professional teacher. I don't know how to teach curriculum. I have no experience in this, but I can read these internalization protocols and these teacher guides, and now I can understand much easier what the goal of the lesson is, much more than I can with the current curriculum now, because I don't have access to it. The great thing about this stuff is everyone can get it. It's open. Anybody has the internet can access this stuff. It's easy to find, and it's pretty easy to understand. And I could see how teachers could be off-put by something that seems very, like if I, with zero teaching experience, think it's helpful, it might not be helpful for them. But as a parent, it also is very reassuring that I can look at that stuff and support the teachers at home and continue the education, because we all know education does not stop when they leave the classroom, or it shouldn't stop when they leave the classroom. So just, as a non-teacher, I appreciate teachers and what they do, but it was helpful for me reviewing this stuff. So that's, I guess, if someone's saying for something positive about that, I think that's a positive.
Dr. Gomez, at the last meeting, I had asked if a teacher had more to expand upon in a lesson because it was minimized in the Bluebonnet lesson, if they would be able to do that. And I thought that I remembered that you said that they wouldn't have time to because it wouldn't fit into the schedule.
So what I talked about was the pacing. So again, that's pretty general. When you say, will the teacher have time to expand upon? Does that mean the teacher wants to take an additional week to tie in additional resources to that reading? Then that I would say no, because you do have to stay within the pacing window. However, does that mean that a teacher cannot supplement to enrich? That is an absolute yes, but you do have to stay within the pacing, and you can't just scrap materials altogether. I think I used the example of, Ms. Ramirez will be my partner. We're both third grade RLA teachers at Campus A, and we decide we don't like this reading selection, we're just not doing it, and we go off and do something else. Because there's a system and process. It's our responsibility as a district to ensure that all of those TEKs are taught, and also to have checkpoints to see how we're tracking as a district. However, there is a system and a process that we use quite frequently for secondary. If we say we have some concerns about this selection, then you go through the process, and then the final decision is made. So yes, teachers very much have a voice, but to have full autonomy, then you have no alignment in the instructional material, and that would be a no, because then you're not consistent. When we talk about how do districts end up in a situation where we're all over the place, our arrows aren't going in the same direction, and that's how you end up in that situation.
All right.
I think I want to speak on that just because. I'm sorry. Amy, I know, it's the teacher in me. I think that goes back to the teacher. So I'm going to use if you're teaching 7 periods a day, okay? And I'm teaching fractions. And I get to my 7th period, and a miracle's happening. Every single child in there already knows how to do it. I'm not going to continue teaching what I teach the other 5 periods for the next week. I'm going to enrich that group of kids. I'm going to take them farther. Same thing in a classroom. First period, if you're teaching fractions, 2 kids don't get it, but the rest do. That's where that differentiation happens. That's the skill of a teacher. Taking the kids that get it, grouping them over here. And so I'm going to ask a reading question. I'm reading a novel, okay? I have children in there that their reading level is so advanced. Would they be required to read the novel that everybody else has to read at 1st grade level if they're in an 8th grade level? I mean, because kids are everywhere nowadays. That's the
There's
hard
different
part.
components to the material. So there are the read alouds, which are on grade level or above to expose them to the vocabulary you're hearing. And there are the decodable readers that go from less complex to more complex text as students learn to read. And that's where the differentiation comes in.
So back
So to say, going back to that,
Yeah.
what a student on, that is, I don't say struggling student, I say striving student. Because when you work with students that need more academic supports, I just think striving is better than saying struggling. We all struggle at different things in life, but as learners, you always have the opportunity to grow and be better. So a striving student, their reader is going to be different than a more advanced reader. That's the continuum of learning to read.
So you're still in the same pace, you're still in that same window, but the window might look different.
So the readers that we've looked at within each grade level are not necessarily the readers that the students would be reading if they're in that grade?
It depends on their individual reading level and what all that student had to cover. That's reading, just regular reading instruction.
Okay.
And I think that's really important to point out the specific TEKs, the statute prohibiting the use of the 3 queuing system. So as you build, you notice that K2, our skills was originally K2, that it's been expanded now to K3. So every 3rd grade student wouldn't need the same level of support for the skills instruction for phonics as they've grown from learning to read to reading to learn.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, yeah, I'm talking.
Sorry.
Yes, I'm speaking. My curriculum, it's not my strong suit. It isn't. I mean, half the time when you're going H, H, Q, F, Q, Q, I have to write it down and just kind of wing it. But, you know, I've been doing this for 20 years, going on 20 years, okay? And my deal is just the fact that, I mean, we've eliminated homestead exemptions. We've discussed very touchy situations that have gone on. This, to me, as personally, as a board member, because I took an oath 20 years ago, going on 20 years, to protect and defend the Constitution of these United States and of the state of Texas. Now, the curriculum, it may be the best in the world, which is fine. I mean, if y'all think it's good and you think it's good, and some of you think it's good, but here's the one thing they did do. They circumvented what we have held true for 200, yes, they did. No one can say they didn't circumvent. Only one attorney there at that thing said that, well, they're not really going around it. There's no amendments right now to the Constitution or to the state Constitution that allows you to do that. You have the exception clause, whatever that is, but no, they haven't changed anything. They haven't changed nothing. And so to me, in a time of day right now, the age we're living in where it's so easy to do that now. Oh, well, you know what? It's just a rule. I ain't doing it. You know, we're going to change it. I'm not. And that's me. Okay, that's how I feel, because to me, they will be, it's almost open, it's opening a Pandora's box, I feel. Okay, it is, because you're gonna have, and I'll just give you an example, just stuff that I was running through my head. But say you're teaching something from the Bible or whatever, and you don't really believe in it. You're like, you start telling the kids, this is not really what happened. This isn't really what happened. This is what happened, and that's what scares me. Because then you have someone who's not even a Christian. You have someone that has a different belief and says, that's not what happened. What happened is this is what happened. Okay? And that's the reason. Like I said, curriculum-wise, like you said, to me, they're not giving us a choice. They really aren't. I mean, this is, you take this or not. Okay? We're going to pay you money to take it. Okay? It's almost like they trickled it down. Okay, well, we got paid to push this through. No, we're going to pay you $40 and $20. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not for sale, and these kids are not for sale. That's how I see it. So that's my personal. And you guys presenting this to us, I understand. That's what the State Board of Education wants us to do. That's what the TEA wants us to do, or to decide what to do. And I understand that's what you presented, and it's nothing against y'all or anything like that, but that's what you presented. But like I said, I draw the line at that. If they didn't mention any of that stuff in there, hey, no problem. We wouldn't be here right now. I'd vote yes. But they want me to cross the line that I said I would never, ever do. Now, if it turns out fine, it turns out fine. But I know that I did not cross the line that I promised not to ever do. So that's my opinion. Like Tim Archer used to say, I'm going to stand up on my little soapbox right here. But yes, so I can tell you right now that I don't want to do that. So
I think it's just important to remember that it's a vote for two different content areas and two different grade spans. So a vote on both will need to be taken.
Mm-hmm. So unless there's more comment, I'm going to make a motion. See what happens. For approval of K through 8 math and algebra 1 to be Bluebonnet Learning as State Board of Education approved as a high-quality instructional material, and that to be adopted as a district. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any further board comment?
If I can just say one thing. Dr. Kingman, thank you very much for separating these out. I've spoken to Dr. Gomez and to several math teachers in our district, and overall, we've seen really a vast improvement in math this year using this curriculum. And math teachers overall seem to like it. They didn't in the beginning, but they have kind of come around now and they understand it now. So I'm okay with the math. We'll have a different discussion when we talk about reading and language arts, but I'm okay with math.
All right, any other more board comments or questions? All right, so I had a motion for myself and a second from Mr. Dindal. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All against, say the same. So 6-1. All right, it's now the fun one. I will make a motion that the SAISD adopts Bluebonnet Learning as a State Board of Education approved high-quality instructional material for K through 5 RLA. Do I have to put the second part? That does all of it, right? K through 5?
That's
RLA.
all that's available.
Sorry, do I have a second?
I'll second.
So a motion for myself and a second from Dr. Mills. Do I have any further board comments or questions?
I have comments. So I actually wrote up comments last night, but all of the speakers tonight said a lot of what I was going to say, so I don't need to reiterate what you all said. Thank you to those of you who came to speak. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your concerns. Those are many of my concerns too. I think a lot of us in this room are currently frustrated by the voucher situation, what's happening with vouchers. And if you look at social media, if you talk to people in legislators' offices, the number of calls and the number of comments and the number of emails are very much against vouchers, but our legislators are voting for them anyway. And I've been reading every one of your texts and calls, listening to your calls and reading all your emails and social media comments. I've spent hours and hours and hours between going through the curriculum and reading everybody's comments and responding to people. And I think I've only had one person in favor of Bluebonnet in all my calls and texts and emails and Facebook comments. And so I don't want to be one of the legislators, like the legislators who are saying, forget you all, I don't have to listen to you because I'm here in this seat right now. And so I'm listening to the people that have reached out to me and spoken here at the meeting, and I will be voting against it.
All right. Any other board comments or questions? All right. I'm going to make y'all speak out loud because I just want to make sure I get it right. Yes or no. All in favor say yes. All right. Either way, just tell me yes or no.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes 4-3.
One comment? Can I do a comment? We already voted, right?
Yes.
Okay, just thank all of y'all. I just want to thank y'all for coming. Really, to me, this is democracy at work. That's what we're here for, is for you to come tell us stuff and for us to act on it or not act on it. So thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. We're now going to move back to our finance and our routine reports, which will be starting on page 7. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Kingman. We have done our management oversight reports. We're in, first of all, our bills and accounts for February start on page 7. Page 9 shows our combined statements of revenue and expenditures. Shows our restricted fund balance at this point of $11.7 million, which most of that is an $8 million construction bill that we are probably close to paying. Showing unassigned fund balance of $52.8 million moving forward into February. Page 12 shows our revenue and expenditures for general fund for February. Should be somewhere around 50%. Revenues at 80 million right now, which is at 61%, which is, we're slightly ahead because we do most of the local collections in December, January, and February. So that's why it's running a little ahead. Our expenditures at this point are 69 million, which technically are 52.1% of our budget. So we're a couple of points higher, but really close to where we should be. Any questions about any of the revenue expense reports? If not, we'll move forward to our check register. That's page 13 through 36. Any questions on check register? This also can be found online under our tab financial transparency. Even our checkbooks online. Any questions about those checks?
I did have questions, but they were answered by Merle, so.
Okay, got it.
Merle answered my questions, so did Jason, so thank you for both of you.
I have a question, and I haven't had it answered yet, but I gotta find the page number. Sorry. There is a bill to Lee Lewis, and I was just curious, where are we on?
Final payments.
We're on final payments on the Lee Lewis, and I assume that's McGill.
I was visiting with Mr. Henry, so they still have the demolition of the building that they're doing right in the middle of the campus at McGill. So they've got approximately 1 million left after that $400,000 payment.
So as far as our committed fund balance,
Showing 8 million.
they're showing 8 million.
Ms. Flores, Director of Finance, so she hasn't moved that balance down yet because there was still money in that account.
Okay.
And so she has paid out of there, and then as we get closer, then she'll make an amendment, and then we'll begin to pull that down. But
Maybe for a Friday fax, could we just get an update on where we are as far as that pay down?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions about our checkbook? If not, we can move to pages 37 through 40 of our agenda for the monthly investment report. The district's total invested funds at the end of February were 85 million prox. Total interest earned for the month was $301,533. Interest earned in the general fund was $267,000 prox. Interest rates in the pools varied at this point from 4.35% to 4.52%. In comparison to January, there were 84 million invested with 325,000 in interest. Our quarterly investment report is on pages 42 to 45. The total investments as of February 28, 2025, the end of the second quarter, were approximately 85 million again. Total interest earned for the second quarter was $910,939.76. The previous quarter, I believe, was 98 million with 1.02 million interest earned. That's the quarter. Those are the investment reports. Any questions on that? If not, we can move to the tax collection report, which is on page 46. For January 2025, our collections for 2023 were at 79%. Totaling approximately 43 million, and our 2024 collections were at 82.61%, totaling approximately 46 million. It's on page 46 of the tax collection report. So slightly ahead of last year as far as collections are concerned. Page 47 through 50 are our POs over $20,000, which include styrofoam trays. We bought a lot of those. There's some maintenance report. Our school resource officers, 21,000.
No, but that's what
styrofoam trays.
That's what styro trays are.
Yes, sir.
I thought it was something like medical they were using or something.
No.
What is styro trays?
Curriculum instruction. We have a lot of that. There's some lease space on there. Also, we bought a little over $20,000 with the orange chicken again. Fiber Tech, which is part of that. There's a property study in there. Bought some laptops, a couple of vehicles, some playground equipment for one of the schools, some occupational and physical therapy expense, fuel for the month. There's a bus repair in there, and there was a TransFinder upgrade. And Dr. Brandon, TransFinder is our bus program. So it's an upgrade on a software program for our bus students that we move around every day. Easier for parents to find too. So with that, I think that concludes our financial and report for February.
All right. Any break? All right, we're going to take a quick stop for a break for the facilities, and we'll be right back. So we'll adjourn for a moment. All right, we are back in session. We are going to move forward with item number 5, all out of order. We're going to consider an E-rate grant application for the funding year of 25-26.
Good evening, everyone. So it's the time of the year, we do this each year, of applying for our E-rate grant application. And so E-rate is funded by a tax that's on all of our phone bills, cell phones, home phones, if you still have a home phone, or a landline type phone. And so it funds for discounts on our internet, wide area network, cable modems. This school year added bus Wi-Fi. For next school year, they've added hotspots. And then they also have a formula where we're allowed to apply for network infrastructure upgrades. And so this is part of that same process that we do each school year. And so for our Wi-Fi, internet, cable modem, we have a multi-year contract. It was bid out last year as part of last year's E-rate project, and it will be about $260,000 that'll come back to the school district based on estimates of what our bills are right now. And then our bus Wi-Fi, we bid it this school year, but this time last year. And we have an extension option on that contract, so we're happy with that vendor. It's Khajiit. And so we're going to continue another year and extend that contract another year, and it'll be about $14,000 that'll come back to us from the USAC E-rate system. And then as part of this year's E-rate posting, we had to bid for network upgrades and hotspots. And so we posted for that as part of the bid process. And so we, Jason Henry and Frank and my network manager, David, and we reviewed the bids that we received. And for network upgrades, we had 2 vendors who responded. That was Insight and, I'm going to say the name wrong, Intech, two I's. And Insight had our highest points. They are the vendor that we've used for a number of years. They know our infrastructure well. They actually contract with a company that has engineers and installers here in town, so that helps lower the price, as well as because of the volume that they do, we get significant discounts. So their price pre-discount was $120,000 less than the other vendor. So we're very pleased that they came back to the table again this year and provided us a quote. So we recommend Insight for the network infrastructure upgrades for next school year. And then for hotspots, we had 4 vendors, Khajiit, Optimum, AT&T, and T-Mobile, all provide quotes. And after our review of the quotes and scoring, we recommend that we go with Khajiit for hotspots. Khajiit is also our vendor for our bus Wi-Fi, and the bonus for picking them is that we will have one management system. So that management system to manage the devices, monitor the the internet usage, and control the internet filtering will all be in one platform. Versus if we chose AT&T or T-Mobile, we would have to have a separate system to manage. Also, they were the lowest cost vendor. So it's a win-win both directions. Plus, we have experience already doing E-rate with them. So they're a good partner with us, and we've actually used Khajiit for several years. We've actually had bus Wi-Fi since before COVID started. We were one of the few districts that had bus Wi-Fi on our buses, and we actually used it during COVID times to help support our kiddos who couldn't come to school during that time, and we put our buses around town, and people would go to our buses to get internet service. So it's been a great company to work with, and so I feel very comfortable recommending them again for continued service with our district. Is there anything I can answer for you?
Any questions for Mrs. Doyle?
I don't have a question, but I just have a positive to tell you. I finally made it to Altaloma. Or are y'all calling it Altaloma?
Technology Center, formerly Altaloma.
I finally made it over to the Technology Center, and it is amazing.
We are loving it.
And I am so excited for y'all. And everyone in there was so nice.
Thank you.
And they seemed really excited. So my heart is happy that y'all have, because I was used to going to the closet.
Yes.
So I'm very happy for
yes,
y'all.
it's a much better setup for us to support our not only our internal staff, but all of our staff across the district and our students.
Yes.
And so part of this, the renewal of the continuation of the contract for our wide area network is this summer we will be moving our server room and the core of the wide area network over there. Optimum has been great to work with. It will put us a better setup than what we've had at the Sousa location. While Sousa has served our district for about 25 years, this is going to set us up for many years to come and allow us to grow and continue to support the district, as well as better lines set up and better connectivity options and so forth. And yes, my staff is thrilled to be there. So we're very pleased to be there, and we appreciate the board's support.
Any other board questions or comments?
Just a comment. When I went to Washington, D.C. this year, one of the topics that they talked to us about to take to our federal legislators was E-rate, because there's a threat of it ending. And I just wanted to thank you for being so informative to us all the time, because I was able to go back to my notes that I had taken from all the things you've said and talk to Senator Cruz's and Senator Cornyn's and Representative Pfluger's staff about how much E-rate has helped our district. And so I think we're still waiting to hear how that goes. But E-rate has had some considerable impacts on our district, starting with, like you said, the Wi-Fi on the buses and all the other technology, the security on the doors and for all the buildings. And so I just wanted to thank you for being so informative to us so that I could sound intelligent when I talk to our representatives.
You're welcome, and I don't mind answering people's questions anytime. To give everybody kind of an idea, so I've been here 20 years, and I looked it up this morning, and we've had, not counting this current year, is about $21 million to our school district. So it has been very impactful to our school district. It helped us to have our infrastructure at a good place when COVID happened and we needed to go to one-to-one. We're ahead of the curve of a lot of districts and already had access points in every one of our classrooms at our secondary level, and we're in the process of getting them in our classrooms at our elementary level. So, and we pushed forward real quickly and finished that project off because it was already in the works. And so it's really helped us to support our learners and our teachers, as well as to do that infrastructure, like you say, the security, the access control, energy management, different things on our network, because more and more is moving to the network and internet. So,
and I can't say enough. Y'all have done a lot. Y'all have done a lot. And
we've tried to stay with the curve.
Like when she just brought up the Wi-Fi for the buses, I remember when y'all were parking them over on Jefferson and all that, where kids could come log on, because they didn't have Wi-Fi at home, but they were able to access it through the buses, and that was a big help.
And we've had some great partners. The vendors that I'm recommending tonight have all been great partners to us, and I look forward to continuing to work with them. And so that's helped us to move forward and move the district's technology infrastructure and resources forward.
All right, do I have a motion?
Dr. Kingman, move to approve the selection of vendors on the attached bid summary sheets for the 25-26 E-rate grant application as recommended by the administration, and authorize the superintendent to execute the final agreement with each selected vendor in a form approved by council for the district without further approval by the board. It's also recommended that the board authorize the submission of the E-rate grant applications for the 2025-2026 funding year.
Second.
Thank you, Charlotte.
So I have a motion from Mr. Dindal and a quick second from Mr. Gallegos. Do we, any other board comments or questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say the same. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you all, and once again, I greatly appreciate your support of myself and my department. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. All right, we're going to move through our proposed agenda for next week. We got the invocation, pledge of allegiance, and recognitions. Probably we're going to have an academic update, which will be our middle of year academic report, which are MAP scores, correct?
Yes, it'll be MAP for third on up and ILM class for early literacy for the primary grades.
Perfect. And then Dr. Moran's going to give us a legislative update. And then we'll be looking through our action items below for consent items. So bills, accounts, and financial statements will stay regular. Quarterly investment report will stay regular.
It actually can go.
Oh, it can go consent. Oh, man, Mr. Dindal, look at loosening the reins. And then we're going to do we're going to talk about the bids for the Child Nutrition Department for the 24-25 school year warehouse products, because y'all have been here all night, and so we're going to let you talk about it right now so you don't have to come back next week. How's that sound?
Well, thank you, Dr. Kingman. We appreciate that. We would have come back gladly and spent time with you next week as well. But thank you, Dr. Kingman, Dr. Moran, ladies and gentlemen of the board and cabinet. We're excited to bring to you our first RFP as a result of the interlocal agreement that was approved back in December by yourselves with Midland ISD. We immediately hit the ground running, coming up with a small list of items to test and see what the savings would be if we were to partner some of our high volume items together. So we seek approval this evening for to purchase items listed on RFP 24-229 for warehouse products as a part of our interlocal agreement with Midland ISD. And as a part of this agreement, our department worked together to develop the selection, and like I said, it's high volume items, and we did receive 2 bids on this. One was from Cisco, West Texas, and the other was from Acme Soap. This RFP was a single vendor awarded contract, and so it is our recommendation that the award go to Cisco, West Texas. They were the lowest bid, but also the only one that was able to provide all of the products requested in the RFP. So the total amount of this interlocal agreement is $559,423.81, with $377,061.49 of that being Midland's contract portion, and $182,362.32 being San Angelo ISD's award portion of the agreement. So if approved, San Angelo ISD could save up to $30,759.87 just on these products listed here. And that's just, a lot of that is juice, so a good example. The juice, if you looked at any of the attachments, came in at about $2.50 less per case, but because we use juice every single day at every single level, and then also high schools have it at both meal times, and then it's also sold a la carte. I mean, we go through 700 cases a week, so when you take $2.50-ish times 700 cases a week per flavor, I mean, it's a huge savings. So we were very excited to see that savings. And again, the savings just comes from the fact that we do have a warehouse. Midland has a warehouse, and because we can bring in bulk instead of them just having to deliver 5 or 6 cases to a school here or there, which is part of our current agreement. That increases costs because of the labor and the trucks and the fuel and all of that goes into delivering products to smaller areas, whereas for higher volume items, we can receive bulk. We're just very fortunate in that way. So just a good thing for San Angelo ISD to have that warehouse. So each district will purchase, receive, store, manage, and pay for their own products. So we're in no way responsible for Midland ISD's portion of their contract, and they are in no way responsible for our portion of our contract. So does anybody have any questions or want any additional clarifications?
So everything went great. Y'all just kind of met together and
Yes, so we held a lot of Zoom meetings. I did offer to go to Midland, but luckily there's Zoom. So we
You don't wanna go to Midland.
we did coordinate a lot. We sent our forecasts over. We met several times to discuss which items would be most advantageous right now for the remainder of the year, because this was a short contract. Again, this was just a bite to see if it would be advantageous for both districts to continue forward with an interlocal. And so we met, we coordinated back and forth on building the RFP, the proposal packet, launched it together. We each advertised it in our own respective areas and on all of that. So, and then we met together to do the opening via Zoom. And then we had another meeting via Zoom where we did all of the tabulation together. And then we came back and even made some additional suggestions after the initial tabulation to add in different columns, which are the ones that you see that compare the savings of San Angelo ISD individually versus Midland ISD individually, because we felt we needed to put that in our packet separately. So it was a really great learning experience, and we've already learned things that we would implement going forward into, if we continue forward with new RFPs, what we would do a little bit differently to even improve the process. So I would say overall, it went pretty smoothly. So.
Well, I just want to thank you, because I know this was kind of your brainstorm a year ago and and got it to the ground. Obviously, we have a good partner in Midland ISD as well.
We do.
And
yes.
You can tell her thank you as well.
I sure will.
But what I would say is thank you all for making sure this happened and saving, like we've talked about, money in the district's tight. And so any pennies we can save is always good.
Yes.
So I'm okay with that being on consent. Everyone else good with consent? Thank you for staying with us tonight.
Thank you again for your support, as always. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you both for being here, really.
Yes, you're very welcome.
Next is TASB Board Policy Update 124. I have a question on it, and I didn't email you ahead of time because I was distracted by other things. So I apologize.
Which one?
When we look at, it's about staff and nicotine products.
Yes, I bet that
It
is.
is page 3
Employee
of
standards of
5 on
conduct?
DH Local A1. It's on, in our, it's 98 in our packet. So it says an employee is prohibited from possessing or using, which is great and on campus. I worry a little bit, what if a vape was in a cup holder in a vehicle parked on campus? It seems a little worrisome on things, something like that.
So it specifies the district vehicle,
but also on property.
but we don't currently go in employees' vehicles on property unless there is a reasonable need
Concern.
to do that, yes.
So a vape pen sitting in a cup holder would not be, okay. That was all I was, I just didn't want someone to be a gotcha. I didn't want a gotcha sort of thing on somebody. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That was one of the ones with the most additions, of course, with that page 3 of 5. Then you'll see that the nicotine products and e-cigarettes came in, a couple of them, those additions. Also under the community policy. Also, I think we need to look, I don't know what page it is for you guys, but under special programs, gifted and talented, that always is a big topic, especially on funding. So if you notice the wording, it's page 3 of 3 under EHBB local.
It's on 104 for y'all, for us.
Okay. I just think it's really important that we've had that discussion because it specifies the superintendent shall develop administrative procedures to ensure that 100% of the state funds allocated. So notice the change from effective use of funds to 100% of funds.
Okay.
Just because we've had some discussions.
Okay.
And then truly, this is always important, and the HR department would add this in the employee handbook, but as educators and serving in any capacity, we're required to report. It's not our role to determine if there is abuse or neglect, but if there's any reasonable suspicion, we are required to report. So if you notice on EFFG local, the oral reports, there's an addition there. It's just the fact that it would be recorded if it was oral.
Yeah.
And then on page 3 of 4, the requirement of the individual providing their name and telephone number, and the school employee, they must provide the business address. So that would be something, I mean, that's reviewed annually, and when HR sends out that employee handbook, they provide a list, and that would be specific under the list to make sure that all supervisors, campus and district department leaders were to review that with their staff. Really, it's a very small update.
Yeah,
Now, we can all be prepared for a lengthy update after this legislative session. So if you want an official report, I'm happy to do that, but the majority of this are very minor changes.
Yeah, I'm okay with consent. I just wanted to clarify the facility. All right, then we'll do bid 25-01, and did I skip one? It's just in the wrong order. Okay. 2501, and that's the Oak Sewer Line replacement.
Thank y'all for having me here tonight. This one should look familiar to most of you. This is the Central Oak Sewer Line replacement. This is a previous project that had been tabled, and now we've rebid it out. The bids went out, and this is for replacing the sewer line for running from the student bathrooms all the way to the city that has collapsed and needs to be replaced. Park Hill, in conjunction with Park Hill, we created RFP and was released for the replacement of the sanitary sewer line at Central Cafeteria Building on Oaks. This will be open later in the week, and I'll make sure that you get a Friday fact and have the recap in the board
It'll be
agenda.
ready. It'll be ready for our regular board meeting.
Yes.
Okay, let's keep that a regular then. And then trades bid 24-025.
This is an annual bid that we do. It's for various departments in the school district need professional trade services at times throughout the year. This bid will establish a pool of pre-approved vendors for various trades to be used on an as-needed basis throughout the school year. Bids were prepared for a variety of trades and sent to over 200 vendors. 75 vendors responded in 52 different categories. The following bid tab lists vendors and categories. The vendors will be used to secure quotes for projects that arise during the year. This contract period will be from April 1, 2025 to March 31st, 2026, with the option of 2 one-year extensions. The administration recommends approval of the vendors in each category as listed on the following bid tab. Do y'all have any questions?
Okay with consent if everyone else is? All right. Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Henry.
Thank you.
All right, so announcements, we'll have a regular board meeting in 2 weeks, not next week, the 24th. And then our finance pre-agenda workshop is April 14th, and our regular board meeting is April 21st. We do need to go into executive session very briefly. I'm so sorry. And that is under personnel matters, 551.074. All right, we are back from executive session. We took no actions, we made no votes, and with that, we are adjourned.